36 men died. Their names were never recorded. Their families never knew why, and the man responsible was sleeping 30 meters away. On top of the evidence, this is the story of one soldier, one hidden act of greed, and a crime that cost an entire nation its first military defeat. But more than that, it is a story about a deeply human pattern, one that has never stopped. To understand what Achan did, you first need to understand what Israel had just witnessed. The book of Joshua, chapter 6, records one of the most extraordinary events in all of Scripture. The city of Jericho, a fortified Canaanite stronghold, fell without a single soldier drawing a sword. Israel marched around it for 7 days. They blew their trumpets. The walls collapsed, but this victory came with a condition. God gave specific instructions. Everything inside Jericho belonged to him. The silver, the gold, the bronze, the iron. Not one item was to be kept. This was called the harem, a kind of divine consecration. The whole city was, in a sense, an offering to God. And taking from that offering was not just theft, it was a violation of the covenant that held Israel together. As a people, every soldier heard that command, including a man named Achan. Achan was from the tribe of Judah, one of Israel's most prominent tribes, the same lineage that would eventually produce King David. He walked through the ruins of Jericho, and then he saw something: a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 silver coins, a wedge of gold. In Joshua chapter 7, Achan himself describes what happened next. He saw them, he wanted them, he took them. Then he buried everything under his tent and covered it with dirt. That was his plan. Hide it, move on. Days later, Joshua sent a smaller force to attack the city of Ai. Scouts reported it was an easy target. The men advanced, and something went terribly wrong. The soldiers of Ai drove them back. 36 Israelites were killed. The army that had brought down Jericho without a sword was retreating from a hill town. Joshua fell on his face before God, overcome with grief and confusion. And God said, "Israel has sinned." Not Achan, Israel. To understand why this mattered so deeply, you need to step back 3,000 years. This story takes place in the late Bronze Age, in the hill country of Canaan. Israel was not yet a kingdom. It was a tribal coalition newly arrived in a land of fortified city-states. Military survival depended on unity, discipline, and, in Israel's theology, the active protection of God. The harem carried a specific logic. The first fruits of victory belonged entirely to God. To take even one piece of the consecrated spoil was to corrupt the offering. And one corrupted offering could contaminate the whole community. Now here's where history becomes genuinely interesting and genuinely contested. The archaeology of the Joshua conquest is one of the most debated topics in biblical studies. Excavations at Jericho in the 1950s found very little evidence of a major fortified city from that period. For decades, this seemed to undermine the historical foundation of the story entirely. But more recent research has complicated that picture. Radiocarbon dating of grain found in Jericho's final destruction layer produced results consistent with the biblical period. And at a site called Khirbet el-Makatir, proposed by some archaeologists as the real location of Ai, excavations uncovered a late Bronze Age fortress with a collapsed gateway and a burn layer consistent with sudden violent destruction. The world of Achan was a real world. The objects he described, wedge-shaped gold ingots and silver shekel hoards, have been recovered at Canaanite sites from the same era. What he buried under that tent was not symbolic. It was heavy. Here is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable. After the defeat, God tells Joshua that someone has taken from the consecrated spoil. Joshua initiates a sacred ceremony, narrowing the suspect tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family, and finally man by man. The result lands on Achan. Only after the lot publicly identified him did he finally speak. He saw, he wanted, he took. Joshua chapter 7 then tells us that Joshua brought Achan, his sons and daughters, his animals, and everything he owned to the valley of Achor. And there the text says, all Israel stoned and burned them. This is the part of the story that has troubled readers for centuries. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24, states plainly, children shall not be put to death for their fathers. Individual accountability is a foundational principle of the Torah, and yet, Achan's entire household appears to have paid the price for his crime. Some scholars argue there is no contradiction here. The family almost certainly knew. A heavy robe, a bag of silver, a bar of gold, buried beneath a communal tent. You cannot hide objects like those without the people sharing that tent noticing. Under this reading, the family were participants, not victims. Others read the text through a historical lens. Many ancient Near Eastern cultures, including Hittite and Canaanite societies, did not separate the individual from the household in matters of guilt. The family was a single legal unit. The narrative may reflect that world rather than prescribe it as a permanent moral standard. A third interpretation focuses on the literary structure of the story itself. Some scholars believe the Achan narrative was deliberately written to echo the Garden of Eden. Look at the language. Achan says he saw, he wanted, he took. In Genesis chapter 3, Eve saw that the tree was good, saw that it was desirable, and took it. The same three movements. This appears to be a deliberate theological echo, a statement that the sin of the garden did not stay in the garden. It traveled with the people into the promised land. Achan's confession is one of the most honest sentences in ancient literature. I saw, I wanted, I took. No excuse, no blame shifted, just 3 words tracing the complete anatomy of a moral failure. Modern psychology recognizes this sequence. Researchers who study impulsive behavior describe it as a breakdown of impulse regulation. A desire is triggered by sight. It grows before the mind can fully assess the consequences. The action follows. But Achan's failure did not end at the taking. It ended at the hiding. He did not sell the robe. He did not spend the silver. He did not flee. He buried everything beneath the place where he slept every night. Psychologists who study theft have noted that offenders who conceal stolen objects rather than use them often carry something unexpected: ambivalence. The object becomes a burden, not a reward, a secret with weight. And Achan watched the lot ceremony close in on him, tribe by tribe, clan by clan. He had time to speak. He said nothing. Sociologists call this shame-based silence. In high-honor cultures, people do not confess voluntarily. Confession comes only when concealment is no longer possible. There is also the question the text refuses to answer cleanly. Why did 36 men die before the investigation even began? Why not a warning the night of the theft? The story offers no simple resolution, but it insists on something uncomfortable. Private sin carries public weight. What one person buries, a community eventually carries. The hidden gold and the 36 dead soldiers were connected in ways that Achan, alone under his tent, chose not to think about. Sitting with that discomfort does not undermine faith, it deepens it. The place where Achan was judged became known as the Valley of Achor. In Hebrew, Achor means trouble. But the story does not end there. Centuries later, the prophet Hosea recorded a promise. God would take that valley, the exact place of judgment and grief, and turn it into a door of hope. Whatever you conclude about the justice of that day, about the fate of Achan's children, about the archaeology beneath those ancient Canaanite hills, the text refuses to let the valley remain only a place of darkness. Even in the valley of trouble, there is a door, and that is worth sitting with for a while. If these ancient stories raise questions you have never thought to ask, if you want to see Scripture through the lens of history, archaeology, and the full depth of human experience, this channel was made for you. Like this video if it made you think. Subscribe so you never miss what we uncover next.